Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions with my co-host Stacie here to talk about planes, trains, and automobiles. We're covering this movie for Thanksgiving month. The movie description reads as follows. A Chicago advertising man must struggle to travel home from New York for Thanksgiving with a lovable oaf of a shower curtain ring salesman as his only companion. The movie was written and directed by John Hughes. 8 directorial credits, 53 writing credits, and 23 producing credits. The 8 directing stints include 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, the Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and his writing credits also include Home Alone, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, etc., etc., and I already said that. But, yeah, basically, if you were a kid in the 80s or 90s, odds are you were watching quite a few of this person's films.
Right.
In any capacity. He died on August 6th, 2009 at the age of 59. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the movie, I highly recommend you check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening to one of the platforms of this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. All right, so Stacie, your thoughts on this week's movie?
All right, so this is another quintessential Thanksgiving movie. I hadn't seen this film in a long, long time. I think it's been at least 20 years, maybe longer, since I'd seen it. And honestly, I didn't remember much of it. I
felt exactly the same thing.
I'm watching it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this scene. Oh yeah, I know what's going to happen next. But going into it, I'm like, I don't remember any of the details.
Right. I only remember glimmers of this movie. There's a scene here and there. Oh, okay, that looks familiar. But the surrounding stuff, I just flat out, straight up, do not remember most of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I know I definitely saw it, but it's been a very long time. I was probably young when I watched it. And,
I was 7 when this movie came out.
I was younger than that. I saw it later than that, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But, I didn't remember it for the most part. And I enjoyed it. I had fun with this one.
Yeah. All right. Do we have anything to say before diving in?
So there's a lot of actors and credits in this movie.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The main thing is because, they're moving the whole time. So you only have these couple main characters, but then you have almost all of these people are under 5s. Like, they're in one scene, they have a couple of lines, and then they disappear.
Right.
Which means we have a lot of people to talk about today.
Yes, absolutely.
I was not able to match all of the characters up to where they are in the film, but I got most of them. So I'm going to hit on them as we talk about their scenes. To the best of my ability. I felt a little more aloof this time than I did with most of the movies that we've recorded so far.
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of crazy. Noting that there's a guy here with 257 credits who's in 5 seconds of this film, no lines.
Yeah, that's the other thing is there's so many big names in this.
Yeah.
They're all little tiny parts. They're what today we would call cameos.
Yeah.
But the thing is, a lot of them probably weren't cameos because they weren't anybody yet.
Yeah, there was definitely a few of those people that were like that.
Also, tons of Quantum Leap
yes.
nods here that we can talk about.
Including one that I never matched up who she actually was. But yeah, I recognized her credit when I saw it.
You are talking about Marie, played by Susan Isaacs.
Yes.
Marie is Dell's wife, who's not actually in the movie. There's just a picture of her in the movie.
Oh, okay, and she's still credited as
and she's credited as in the movie, and that's why I'm so confused by the credits of this movie, because there are people like her who she doesn't even appear as background. There's just literally a picture of her that, plays throughout the film. We see her picture. And we talk about this character, but the actress definitely doesn't have line.
No. Pictures can't talk.
But she's got a credit. Maybe there was a deleted scene at some point.
Maybe.
That she ended up getting a credit. There's other similar situations where people that do not have lines have credits. Then we've got people in the uncredited listings who definitely do have lines and should have credits.
Yeah.
And then there was a couple people I'm like, I can't find this person at all, whether they're listed credited or uncredited.
Right.
For example, the train conductor. Could not find him in these credits, but he definitely was there. He definitely talked.
Right.
So I'm very confused by the credits.
All right, I guess we'll just dive right in.
All right, so we're going to go scene by scene through the film and talk all about it.
All right, the movie begins 2 days before Thanksgiving with Neil Page at his job with his boss looking over his work. Neil is played by Steve Martin, 72 acting credits for him, including Bowfinger, which is a movie that I saw with a couple of high school buddies, The Jerk, and both Father of the Bride movies. 47 writing credits for him, including Only Murders in the Building, which of course he also stars in, which, by the way, now has a Scott Bakula cameo.
It does. Scott Bakula appeared in season 4. I haven't watched it yet. We
Nope.
are recording this before Thanksgiving.
Right.
A little bit. So I'm a little behind on Only Murders. But yes, Scott Bakula finally made an appearance in that show after being name dropped several times throughout the last couple of seasons. And the connection within the show is that Scott Bakula, playing himself, shares a stunt double with Steve Martin's character.
Okay.
So I can see it. I can see Steve Martin and Scott Bakula now that Scott Bakula looks old.
You know, it's interesting because Steve Martin always looked old.
He looks exactly the same today as
Yeah.
he did in this movie in 1987.
He looked like a 60-year-old,
exactly the same.
a 60-year-old man, but he was not that old back then. And I think he's older than that now. I'm not quite sure how old Steve Martin is.
I don't have his age, but yes, it's higher than that. I'm fairly certain.
But he's like in his 40s at this point.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like literally every movie he's ever done, he looks exactly the same.
It's kind of like Anthony Hopkins, which I can only picture as an old man. And he's been an old man for at least 40 years.
Yeah. I was also surprised Steve Martin only has, 70-something acting credits. I was really surprised by that. I feel like he's been in everything.
Yeah.
I guess just the roles he's been in have been so iconic, and he doesn't have as many one-off roles.
Right.
Where we look at somebody else whose IMDb has 300 listings, yet we can't place them anywhere.
Right.
It's so bizarre how that works.
Speaking of someone like that, the client, his boss, as best as I can tell, is Bryant, who spends the entire scene not speaking, even though looks like he's about to. He's played by William Wyndham, 257 credits for him. He was in 2 episodes of the Philco Playhouse, his first credit in 1949. He was in a Star Trek, the original series episode as Commodore Decker in the Doomsday Machine, and an episode of Jag, plus plenty more. His last credit was in 2006. His career spanned 57 years.
Wow.
And he died on August 16th, 2012.
All right. So Neil is in New York at this meeting, and he needs to get to Chicago, which is where he lives. And it's 2 days before Thanksgiving, so it's Tuesday afternoon is where we're starting our story. And he's looking at his watch. We see that he has a 6 p.m. flight leaving JFK that he's trying to get to. He mouths to his coworker that he's got to go. They got to wrap this meeting up. And we see the ticket. So the flight's scheduled to leave at 6 p.m. It's scheduled to land in Chicago at 6:45. There's an hour time difference, which means all of this is over a 1 hour and 45-minute flight. That's what's at stake here, is a 1 hour and 45-minute flight that he must take quite regularly if he lives in Chicago and does business in New York.
Right.
And the person that he is with, his coworker, is John, another person who's listed as uncredited.
But he's played by Lyman Ward, and fun fact about him, he's married to Cindy Pickett, who was in the movie Son-in-Law, which we just covered.
Okay.
Yep, she plays the mother that's married to Lane Smith's character.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so they're real life husband and wife.
Yes.
Which is very interesting because they played the parents in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, really?
I remember that from her credit when we did Son-in-Law, and I
Okay.
have that for him, that he played the dad in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, interesting.
I wonder if they were already together at that point.
You know what? I'm thinking we need to cover Ferris Bueller's
We'll
Day
add
Off.
that to our
Yeah.
summer lineup for
Right,
next
yeah,
year. Or maybe the spring, but we're done with it for now. No,
Right, yeah.
Fall is done.
Right, yep.
Done with holidays. Lyman was also in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, and he was in 3 episodes of Jag, which is something we reference quite often.
And as well as that, Magnum P.I., which is a Donald Belzerio series, and Not Another Teen Movie, which I found kind of fun to watch.
So, yeah, this is crazy. We have so many amazing credits to talk about already, and these are uncredited people.
Right. Yep.
So to move the story along a little bit, and I just wanted to reference this. As we landed in different cities throughout our journey, I did keep track of how far away they are. So that's an hour and 45-minute flight. If you were to drive from JFK to Chicago O'Hare, which is as close as we can get to knowing where he's supposed to be going, it's 826 miles. It would have been just over 13 hours if he just got in the car and drove there. And we're about to embark on a 3-day adventure.
All right, so this guy, John, as they're leaving the meeting, says he's not even going to bother making the 6. He's going to try to go out at 8 o'clock.
Right, because they both live in Chicago.
Right.
They're usually travel together.
It seems like Neil would have saved himself an awful lot of trouble in this movie if he had just gone on the 8 o'clock
Well,
flight.
we never found out what happened with John. Did his flight leave on time?
Maybe he ended up in the Bermuda Triangle.
Well, maybe. But John's supposed to get Neil's gloves. Neil left his gloves in the boss's office, and he's like, nah, I won't need them. I'm just getting on the plane. He's going to want those gloves.
Yep, and then we cut to a very distracting Kevin Bacon cameo. If I were CinemaSins, I'd be like, Kevin Bacon distracting cameo. Is distracting.
His character is called Taxi Racer.
And the degree of separation here is 0. Now, I looked into this, where he was in his career at this point. He had already done Footloose. He's doing 3 movies this year. And yeah, he was already a pretty well-known entity that he was taking this.
So you believe this was an actual cameo?
And it's a really weird thing to do to someone who's already established.
Now, this character was credited in the film, although I don't think he had any lines.
Right. Kevin Bacon, by the way, 106 credits for him, including A Few Good Men, Stir Up Echoes, and Footloose. The degrees of separation here is 0 because he's actually here. And we already covered one of Kevin Bacon's daughter's movies in Smile. And that would be Stacie Bacon.
Yes. He was also in Friday the 13th.
And I mentioned Footloose came out in 1984. And this movie is 1988. So.
Oh, I have 87 for this movie.
87? You're probably right.
One of those.
Close enough.
It might have been like production versus release or theatrical versus...
He ends up negotiating for a cab, offering more money to a lawyer, who I believe is played by Nick Wyman, and he... no, I guess not.
Yes, the New York lawyer is played by Nick Wyman. Because he missed out on the taxi that Kevin Bacon stole, he tries to get this lawyer hailed a cab, and he's trying to negotiate with the lawyer. He's like, I'll give you $10, I'll give you $20. The lawyer asks for $50, and he agrees to it. And but then the lawyer's like, well, if you'll pay $50, you'll pay $75. So he extorts him for $75, which is a lot of money in the 80s. But just as Neil hands over the money, the cab is stolen. So again, the New York lawyer is played by Nick Wyman. He was in the movie Split. He also was in 3 episodes of a time travel series called Future Man. And he actually played Abe Lincoln in that series.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting because Scott Bakula is about to play Abe Lincoln, or already has by the time this airs. We're going to go see him do that, so that's awesome. And the cab driver is played by,
Gaetano Weezy?
That, sure. He was in the movie Big Daddy and 2 episodes of Law and Order.
All right, so for Nick Wyman, I got 46 credits for him, including Igby Goes Down, Die Hard with a Vengeance, and 5 episodes of Swan's Crossing, which was basically a teenage soap that didn't last very long, that had Sarah Michelle Gellar in it. The cab driver that we mentioned, 12 credits for him, acting credits, 12 assistant directorial credits, including working on Scrooge, which is a movie we will cover.
Okay.
Neil, so yeah, this cab is stolen.
The cab's stolen. Neil chases the cab down the street.
We don't see Del get into the cab, but we're soon going to see Del for the first time as Steve Martin opens the door, scaring the crap out of him. He just looks startled, and the cab ends up driving off. Del is played by John Candy. 71 credits for him, including Uncle Buck, Canadian Bacon, and Cool Runnings. He died on March 4th, 1994 at the age of 43.
I know, he died very young. He was also in Brewster's Millions. He was in Home Alone.
Yes.
Taking on a role that is very reminiscent of this movie, about having to travel through unique ways on the holidays. They should have just named that character the same.
Something I didn't mention is that he's also in Uncle Buck, which the director and writer of this movie, John Hughes, was also involved with.
Yeah, John Hughes likes to use the same actor, so we'll see a lot of his other films in, these credits.
And I can't even tell you how much it bothered me that he died at 43. I'm 43.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess so far I'm living longer than John Candy did.
And before we move on, I have a couple of uncredited listings to pop in here. We have a cab victim played by Kevin Ash and a Park Avenue pedestrian played by Gary McNeely. McNearly.
So we cut to Neil's family having dinner. His wife, Susan, played by Layla Robbins. 90 credits for her, including 13 episodes of The Boys, an episode of the American Horror Stories, and an episode of Handmaid's Tale. The kids are played by Olivia.
She's also in 15 episodes of The Walking Dead.
Oh, okay.
She plays, I didn't write her character's name down. She's in the last season.
The daughter is played by Olivia Burnett. 45 credits for her, including 2 episodes of Quantum Leap, Another Mother, and The Leap Home Part 1. Yeah. She actually played Sam's sister.
Right.
And 10 episodes of Sons of Anarchy. And a movie that she recently popped in that I happened to watch for the first time ever, The Quick and the Dead with Sharon Stone.
Okay.
She's also in that movie. And the son is played by Matthew Lawrence. 69 credits for him, including 3 episodes of Blossom, 69 episodes of Boy Meets World. He reprised the role for an episode of Girl Meets World and 40 episodes of Brotherly Love.
And, of course, Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one.
That's where I recognize him the most from. Of course, he's always been, overshadowed by his brother. But,
yes.
One more thing for Olivia I wanted to mention. She played the same character in 20 episodes of The Torkelsons, as well as 13 episodes of Almost Home.
And what was the character? Someone.
I don't remember her name.
Okay. So Neil calls...
But I've always loved her.
Right. Neil calls, promising to be in by 10. He doesn't say what day by 10.
Okay, so you skip the scene where actually he gets to the airport finally on time.
No, I think that's next.
Well, no, because he wouldn't have called saying he's running late if he caught his plane.
Yeah, okay. Well, wait, he hasn't gotten on the plane yet.
He hasn't gotten on the plane, but he got to the airport in time to catch the flight after all that, just to find out that his flight was delayed.
Okay.
So the 6 o'clock flight is no longer taking off at 6 o'clock, and we're told that by the New York ticket agent, played by Ruth DeSosa, who was in the movie Hook and an episode of Freddy's Nightmares.
Ooh.
And so all of that with the cabs was for naught because the plane wasn't going anywhere anyway. So that's when he called home and said that he's running late, but he should be there by 10. Originally, he was supposed to be home by 9, which is why he didn't want to get on that 8 o'clock plane with his friend. Now he says he'll be home by 10. Spoiler alert, he's not going to be home by 10.
No. Well, he will be home by 10 some other day.
Perhaps.
In the lobby, waiting for the plane, who should he notice sitting in front of him but Dell, the taxi thief? And Dell tries to make up for it, using various things that he could...
He wants to buy him a hot dog and a beer, and Neil declines. Then he goes through like 20 other snack options.
And Neil grumpily turns down his every effort. They end up getting on the plane to realize that Neil is getting downgraded to coach, and the stewardess is not very sympathetic. And I believe this one is played by Diane Castle, who has 36 credits, including an episode of The X-Files in Season 8. And there's another stewardess credited, I don't know who she is, but she's credited as Julia H. Morgan. She has 3 credits, and this movie is her last one.
Diana Castle is also in an episode of Sliders.
Oh, okay.
But the second stewardess, I didn't pick up on there being a second stewardess. But she's there somewhere, apparently.
Yeah, I guess so. So his next punishment, for something he did in a previous lifetime, is he gets to sit next to Dell on the flight back, or flight home, really. He does nothing but annoy Neil the entire time.
Like taking his shoes and socks off and waving them around in Neil's face.
And mentions that he sells shower curtain rods, which will kind of be...
curtain rings.
Rings, okay.
Yeah, rings. That's important.
Yes, it is. And next to him, later on in the flight, next to him, we see a sleeping passenger played by Bill Irwin, who was in a Quantum Leap episode, Hurricane.
He was in the episode Hurricane. He played Mr. Deaver. He was also in an episode of Star Trek Next Generation. He's in the movie Home Alone.
Okay.
He was in 14 episodes of Gunsmoke, 4 episodes of Twilight Zone, an episode of I Love Lucy. A lot more credits than I usually give somebody, but this man was acting for a very long time.
Oh, yeah, he definitely
has
was.
A big career. We also saw a pilot that got on the plane. Not the pilot flying the plane, but he got on as a guest. The character's name is Larry, but he was just credited as pilot. He took Neil's first class seat is what happened.
Oh.
So he gets on, and the stewardess said to him, you can sit anywhere. Go ahead. And that's why Neil was bumped.
Oh, okay.
So that actor is Gary Palmer. This was his only acting credit.
Oh, okay. Sleeping on his... Oh. And?
Are you still on the airplane?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So sleeping on his other shoulder is Del, who briefly wakes up and says $6 and a left nut that they won't land in Chicago. And he turns out to be right. It's snowing at home when he calls his wife to say that they couldn't land in Chicago, so they ended up in Wichita.
Okay, so I have some more uncredited listings to pop in here.
Okay.
From the plane, we have 3 plane passengers. George Sasaki, Jimmy Booth, and Robert Hitchcock.
Any of them have anything of note?
I didn't get into most of the credit listings for the uncredited people because by the
too
time
many
I
of them?
finished all the credited people, I didn't have a lot of energy left for the uncredited people.
Gotcha.
A couple of them I found things for, but for the most part, I was like, I give up.
It's a pretty absurd movie for credits, that's for sure.
So we're now in Wichita. We're at the Wichita airport. Now, I looked up again the distance between Wichita and Chicago. It's 724 miles.
Mm-hmm.
It would be 10 hours and 45 minutes to drive. And it would be a 2-hour flight. So we actually went further out of our way to get to Wichita than where we started in New York.
Right.
So that's where we are right now. Is we're actually worse off than if he had just waited in New York and not got on this plane at all.
So, he ends up calling his wife, explaining this situation. Del approaches him and says essentially that they're going to end up stuck there, and he's already making plans about that. And sure enough, it is announced by Ben Stein, the Clear Eyes commercial guy, that the flight is in fact canceled. He has 80 credits for him, including Casper, which we definitely want to cover at some point.
Yeah, he has a very distinct voice. So
Yes.
he's done a fair share of cartoon voice work.
Mm-hmm.
He also is in 11 episodes of The Wonder Years, and he plays a teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Ah, yes. Del offers him a chance to stay in a hotel rather than the airport, and Neil, looking around and seeing sleeping passengers laying around.
Right, because he already
this.
tried calling motels and couldn't get a room. And Del basically says, hey, I know a guy. He knows a guy everywhere they go because he sold everyone shower curtain rings. He says, I know this guy. I'll be able to get you a room. If you pay for the cab, then I'll make sure you get a room. And Neil thinks that's a decent enough deal.
Right. And then we have a unique cab driver driving him around. He's got like naked pictures all over the wall. He's played by Larry Hankin, 195 credits for him, including 2 episodes of Breaking Bad and the follow-up movie El Camino. He was also in 3 episodes of Star Trek Voyager, which I found very interesting. I didn't make the connection earlier because I know this actor because I do remember him from Breaking Bad. When I realized that he played like a hologram in a couple episodes of Star Trek Voyager, I'm like, really? That's the guy? He's definitely looks significantly older than his Star Trek Voyager days.
He also is in 1 episode of Star Trek Next Generation.
I missed that one.
5 episodes of Friends, and he's in the movie Home Alone.
Oh, well,
and this cab driver's name, the character is Doobie. Before we go too far past there, I just want to do a couple more uncredited shout-outs for stuff that happened at the airport, because we're done with the airport now.
Mm-hmm.
We have airport travelers, Tom Willett and G. Wayne Hill. We have a Wichita airport commuter in Shirley Anthony. We have man at Wichita Airport, Daniel Niswander and Larry Ludwig. We have airport baggage handler, Malik Jabal. We have child at Wichita Airport, Angela Kay. Mother in airport, Nancy Cusley. And on the telephone in the airport is Dominic Clark.
So they're taken to a hotel who is run by a friend of Dell's, played by Gus Tyner, 89 credits for him.
The character's name is Gus. The actor is Charles Tyner.
That's what I meant to say. 89 credits for him, including an episode of Matlock, 2 episodes of The Wonder Years, and an episode of Dallas. He died on November 8th, 2017 at the age of 94. And he's got an old-fashioned credit card reader. And when
it wasn't old-fashioned in the 80s.
No, but it is now, that's for sure. I don't think I've seen one of those in a really long time. Wouldn't you know it, they end up sharing a room together.
Yeah, so, and what happened with the card is important here. So Neil charges the room to his Diners Club card.
Yep.
Del doesn't have a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
Tel's card is just like an hotel rewards membership card.
Okay.
But they look identical, which doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But they get switched. So Neil paid for the room. Del got his card back. So Del's holding the Diner's card now, and Neil just has this worthless hotel card in his wallet now.
Okay. So they share a room.
They share a room, which
as it turns out, a bed as well.
Yeah, there's only one bed. Neither of them are excited about this. They both are very awkward about it. But they're both kind of being troopers at this point.
Right.
Neither of them have refused to go along with this because they don't know what else to do. They've gotten themselves into the situation, and they're just going to go roll with it.
So Neil showers, and in the middle of rinsing, the water goes off, only to turn back on randomly. Meanwhile, Dell is having a grand old time in bed, drinking, and eventually end up spilling a beer. And at night, Neil is trying to sleep in a spot where Dell spilled some beer.
And not to mention, Dell already showered before Neil, used every single towel in the hotel room, except for a little washcloth. So when Neil got out of this shower, the only thing he had to dry off with was a teeny washcloth. And so he's not having a great night.
No.
And one of the things Dell did is he put that picture of his wife on the nightstand. It's the first time we've seen her. And he'll put that picture out every place that they end up going. And they've got the old vibro beds in here that Dell is playing with.
Yep. And when Neil is trying to sleep, Dell keeps talking and just generally being annoying. And Dell and Neil finally just end up arguing. Neil goes on for a while on a pretty long and mean rant.
He's being very, very mean.
And then Dell makes him feel very bad for it by saying, you can say all this all you want, but my wife likes me, and so on and so forth.
And that's all that matters.
Right.
Yeah.
And Neil just kind of looks like, like he regrets saying all these things.
Yeah, he realizes he's being very harsh, and eventually they go back to bed, try and get some sleep, but during the night, a motel thief breaks in and takes all of the cash out of their wallets. I don't think I'd want to stay here.
No. He's played by Gary Riley. 29 credits for him, including Summer School, which I believe you want to cover.
Yes, he is one of the main stars of Summer School, which when I saw his IMDb picture, it's the picture from Summer School, and I was like, oh, that guy. Like, he's one of the two main stars of Summer School. He also is in the movie Stand By Me, and he has a small role in Back to the Future.
And he was also in Growing Pains. The next morning, Dell is cuddled up with Neil. He ends up kissing his ear, which Neil is kind of responsive to in his sleep. But then they wake up, realize the position they are in, and they get both very grossed out.
Yeah, including one of the most classic lines from this film is Neil asks Dell where his other hand is, and it's between two pillows, which are not pillows.
Right. And we'll just let your imagination go there. Basically they get up and they act all manly and talk about their local sports teams. And, basically just trying to, deal with the whole gay panic thing. But there's a brief phone call with his wife, who thinks he's crazy for staying in a hotel with a stranger. Is his name Brian Green, by chance? Nobody else is going to get that reference, but if you're a regular listener on the channel, you might. So they eat breakfast together. Dell suggests getting home by train, and they both realize that they have been robbed, but not before Neil accuses Dell of doing it.
Right, because he realizes his money is missing first. Dell had access. I mean, that's logical that you're going to think this stranger that you just shared a room with is the person that took your money. But because both of their money's gone, they realize they've been robbed, and this isn't great. Neil had $700 cash in his wallet.
That's absurd.
Sounds like a lot of money, especially in the 1980s.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
I mean, he has a pretty decent job, so.
Yeah, but why are you carrying that much cash?
I mean, I guess that was more of a thing back in the day.
Much? There's no instance you're going to need that much cash on hand.
All right, you're right.
In the 80s.
Okay. I definitely wouldn't be doing it. Ever, really.
Dell was carrying $263. He knows exactly how much money he's supposed to have, which still seems like a fairly large amount, but given we later learned that, his whole life is on the road, I guess it makes more sense for him that he's carrying everything he's got, because he's carrying everything he's got.
Right.
These are his worldly possessions in this giant trunk that they're carrying around. I don't think we've mentioned the trunk yet.
No.
So this trunk is being carried everywhere. It's basically a character. It's the third main character in this film.
We meet
Dell's
the
trunk.
We meet the trunk before we meet Dell.
We meet the trunk before we met Dell because Neil trips over the trunk, which is the reason that Kevin Bacon got the first cab.
Mm-hmm. So they meet up with a guy named Owen, played by Dylan Baker.
Owen is Gus's son. Remember, Gus is the one who runs the hotel. His son, Owen, is supposed to bring them to the train station.
151 credits for him. He was in 2 of the Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire. He was recently in Dream Scenario, which was a Nick Cage movie, and 2 episodes of Evil, which is a series I kind of want to check out.
He was also in 4 episodes of The Resort, which is a time travel-esque show. It was an interesting one.
It does sound interesting.
Yeah, Owen is a very peculiar creature.
Yeah, he's making like pig noises, and he wants to make his wife get out to put the
I wouldn't want to
back.
be around Owen.
No.
And this is a moment where the 2 men are bonding over their shared acknowledgement of how crazy and weird Owen is. It's not the 2 men against each other in this moment. It's the 2 of them joining forces about this situation that they're facing.
And the wife is played by Louie Newcomb. She only had 7 credits for her, and this being her first one.
Including an episode of Mr. Belvedere.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so he's like, oh, you guys aren't going to carry that trunk. She's going to get off her lazy butt and carry it for you. And she's this small little woman. She's holding an infant. She puts the infant down.
I thought she was also pregnant.
Put the trunk. She might have been. He makes reference that she's strong because her first baby came out sideways.
Right, yeah.
And she didn't even scream.
Yeah, I don't quite understand why this woman is with him, for sure.
Well, the whole family's with him. There's multiple kids in the front seat.
No, I mean, I don't know why she stays with him.
Right. Well, you know.
She's not an unattractive woman. She can do better.
This family, I wouldn't want to know any of them, I think.
Right.
So because the cab is full, they're going to be riding in the back of the pickup truck. And they're told that they're not going back into Wichita. They're going to Stubbville. Which Dell tells us is anywhere from 30 to 70 miles further than Wichita.
Ah, nice. At the train station, Neil thinks he's saying goodbye to Dell, but we got 55 minutes left of this movie, so that's highly unlikely. Basically, Dell's talking about meeting up with him in the cab to share a drink, but Neil's like, nah, I'm going to be sleeping.
Yeah, so Neil's... he's done with Dell.
Right. He's
saying goodbye. He very purposely bought 2 tickets that were not next to each other.
Right.
And I'm confused how this involved a favor from someone that works on the trains that Dell knows if they're just here buying tickets.
Right, yeah.
Somewhere along the line they lost something that they just bought tickets to get on this train. But yeah, he's like, see ya, I'm going to sleep. Dell wants Neil's address to repay him for the ticket. Neil refuses, saying it's a gift, but really, he doesn't want this crazy man to know where he lives, is what it comes down to.
So, he thinks he's in the clear. Neil thinks that he's going to go home. It's all going to be good. But sure enough, the train breaks down. He's told by a train engineer that he can just walk down a mile and end up at a truck stop.
The passengers have to walk 1.5 miles through a field that's covered in manure to get to the road where trucks are going to pick them up and take them into Jefferson City where they can catch another mode of transportation. This does not feel like very good customer service by this train.
No, I hope they're getting a refund.
They need to send a tractor or something through this field to pick up these customers.
Right.
Not make them walk 1.5 miles through a field. And Neil sees that Dell is struggling with his trunk and decides to go help him carry it. In the train, we had this young girl sitting next to Neil. I could not figure out who she was.
Nor could I, which is why I didn't bother talking about her.
Did not match her up to a credit, as well as the conductor you mentioned giving the directions. He's not in these credits anywhere, and he had a lot of lines. So I don't know. Uncredited listings, I do have a man on suit in train. Man in a suit on a train, rather, played by Charles Frankie.
Okay.
And so now we are at the Jefferson City Trans-Missouri bus station. And the driving distance to Chicago O'Hare from here is 394 miles. If they started driving now, it would take them 6 hours and 15 minutes. We're inching closer. Not close enough.
So they notice a pair of very randy bus patrons. One is played by Andrew J. Hentz. This is his only acting credit. And the girl is played by Karen Meisinger. This is also her only acting credit. And basically, the guy ends up calling out Neil for staring at these people that are making out and seemingly want to go further than that right next to them on the bus. But yeah, anyway, the bus only takes them to St. Louis.
Right. And anything to get from St. Louis to Chicago is booked solid. And so that's not good news. This bus is not going to take them very far. But they have good spirits. The bus passengers start singing songs.
Including the Flintstones.
Neil sings a song that nobody knows. But Dell saves it by following up with the Flintstones theme song. And I have one more uncredited listing here for the bus. We have Bus Rider, played by Conrad Hurt. And then they arrive at the Trailways bus station in St. Louis. which is now 289 miles away from where they're trying to get to, which would be a 4.5-hour drive to Chicago.
Woot woot. Dell sells some shower rings to get some money to travel. Neil calls home. His daughter Marty is in some type of play.
Yeah, she's in a Thanksgiving pageant, which is why no one's there. And he's really sad that he missed this. But yeah, Dell proves here that he's a great salesman. So he's selling the shower curtain rings, but pretending that they're earrings. And he's making up stories. So he's like a shoddy salesman. Like, he's lying his teeth off, but he's good at it. Maybe he should go sell cars.
Perhaps.
So he's like, oh, this is signed by this person, and this is designed by that person. And then we see all these girls wearing these shower curtain rings as earrings. Yeah. And I mean, I guess I get it. It looks like 80s fashion, but it's also very ridiculous. He ends up making $100 selling them because they're worth more as earrings than they are
than I would do.
Shower curtain rings. And all of these girls who do not have any lines are credited in this movie. And I didn't write down anything else they've done. Most of them, this was their only credit. A few had other things, but I'm going to read their names. Yeah. Diane Neiman, Sylvia Vitrungs, Joanne Tyler, Julie A. Herbert, Jennifer Allswing, Wendy Lee Avon, and Amy Myers are all credited. And then we have one uncredited earring customer in Alva Morgan.
I wonder what...
None of them spoke, though.
I wonder what she did to piss them off to be uncredited when the other girls were credited.
Again, I don't understand.
And most of the ones you just mentioned, that was their only credit. Yeah,
a few of them had something, but nothing of any significance that I noted down.
So Neil and Dell end up eating together at some kind of restaurant. Neil laments not being home too much or enough. Neil once again tries to split with Dell. This upsets Dell, but initially it seems to work.
Oh, and Dell says that he hasn't been home in years, which is an important line. So Neil's like, I'm just holding you up, so we're going to part ways. It'll be easier for us to finish this journey on our own. Dell's obviously very offended by that they're parting ways. He does give Neil half of the cash that he just earned. He's like, well, we're partners, here's your cut, which he doesn't have to do that.
Right.
But also, Neil's okay. He's got credit cards. Even after the one that, is in Dell's wallet now, he still has a Visa card, because we went over our list of credit cards. Neil's got cards. Dell didn't have anything, but now he's got he's got Neil's Diners Club card. I don't know if he knows that yet or not.
Right.
But it shows a lot about his character that he's like, here's 50 of the dollars I just earned. And
to his credit, Neil does try to refuse the money, but Dell will not hear of it. He ends up getting dropped off by bus at what is supposed to be his car that he just rented.
Yeah, so it's like a shuttle that goes... Yeah. So he went to the airport.
Yeah.
And to rent a car from the airport. And this is a shuttle bus that took him to the parking lot where the cars are, which is probably a mile or two from the airport counter, right? That's why they have a shuttle. He's supposed to pick up a car in spot V5.
Yep.
There is no car in spot V5. And this is, we don't have cell phones in 1987.
Right.
So he tries waving down the shuttle driver.
Which is not going to work.
It's not going to work. It doesn't work at all. And the shuttle driver is an uncredited listing played by Chino Fats Williams. He does not get his attention. Now, I think what he should have done is just waited there, because sooner or later that shuttle's going to come back with somebody else, right?
Right, yeah.
So I'd have just waited there.
Right.
It's a busy day. So they're going to come back with somebody else renting a car.
I'm sure.
But he doesn't do that. He walks very angrily all the way back to the airport, including down a snowy embankment and literally across the runway.
Right. That seemed a little dangerous. So he ends up returning to the car rental place, and the person that's attending it is too busy being on the phone. She's played by Eddie McClurg. 226 credits for her. I didn't bother to take any credits for her.
She has tons and tons of voice work.
Yeah.
Like hundreds of voice credits, different cartoons. So she has one of those people that you know her voice probably, even if you don't know who she is.
She looked familiar to me.
She was in 3 episodes of Melrose Place. She was also in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Okay, so that's probably why.
Yeah, we definitely got to cover that one sometime.
I think so, because this movie more or less made that necessary.
But she's just, it's the day before Thanksgiving. She's on the phone making Thanksgiving plans, and Neil is more than a Karen to her. Let me say that.
Right. Yeah.
He doesn't even be like, he doesn't tell her what the problem is. He just immediately starts screaming and swearing. He is beyond rude to this woman. It's not her fault.
No.
That the car wasn't in the spot.
And none of the other stuff that has happened to him along the adventures is her fault either.
Right. But she remains her calm. She is very professional, and she's like, let me see your rental agreement. And he says he threw it away. Why would you throw it away?
Right.
Obviously, you need that.
Mm-hmm.
And she gives him an oh boy, which I thought was great. If you know, we're big Quantum Leap fans, and that's the classic line from that show. So she gives him an oh boy and tells him that he is effed.
Right, yes. So he ends up talking to some person.
He goes to the taxi stand
Okay.
outside of the airport. And so his plan now is he's going to just take a cab.
Right.
From, where are we? St. Louis to Chicago, which again is a 4.5-hour drive.
Right.
And the cab dispatcher, who is played by John Randolph Jones, he was in the movie Trading Places, as well as 3 episodes of Law and Order. He basically laughs at him and is like, you're in St. Louis, right? You can't take a cab to Chicago.
Right.
He's like, did you try getting on a plane? Like, I hear there's planes over there. That should be faster. And Neil doesn't want to hear it. He is in no mood for any kind of joking. And he is even more rude and nasty to this man than he was to the girl at the counter. And the guy doesn't take it. He punches Neil, knocking him into the street. And for the second time in this film, he was almost run over.
And this time, he's almost run over by Dell.
Yes, who had no trouble renting a car.
Yes, imagine that.
I wonder if it was the car in Spot V5.
Maybe. That'd be really funny. It's never mentioned, but it should have been.
It should have been.
Like, oh yeah, this was in... But anyway.
Like they rented the car to both of them, and
Right.
he got there first.
Yeah. And that's how they end up reuniting and traveling together again. As Neil drives, Dell is annoying him with his seat and his running mouth. Dell's turn to drive. Neil ends up sleeping. Dell ends up trying to adjust his seatbelt and swerving all over the road as Neil sleeps somehow. I would not be able to sleep through that. Somehow he gets turned around and driving in the wrong direction. He gets warned by a couple.
Okay, hang on. Okay, couple things important to note that you skimmed past a little bit.
Yeah.
Neil put his wallet in the glove box.
Yes.
That's important to note. His wallet's in the glove box. We got to remember that as we move forward.
Right.
And Dell, when he was dancing around and smoking, dropped his cigarette into the back seat of the car. That's very important to note.
Right.
Before he did this whole spinning around thing, which happened because his jacket got caught on the seat.
Right.
So he's not doing good all around.
Yeah.
He threw his cigarette on the back seat. Then he got his jacket caught. Could have killed them.
Right.
Managed to pull out of it. And then starts driving in the wrong direction.
And he ends up getting warned by a couple that are driving alongside them. Dell ignores and mocks them, but they are right, and they almost die going through some trucks, which I can't imagine how they managed to do that.
Yeah, they fit perfectly between these two trucks, just scraping the sides of the car. During which this scene, Dell momentarily appears as a skeleton and then as the devil.
Now, what's interesting about this is I used to go to Wolfpack games in Hartford, and they used to play this little clip of him turning into the devil. I don't understand the context of why they do that, but I remember this scene the most because of that them playing that clip constantly. And the Wrong Way guy is played by John Mohio. 184 stunt credits for him.
Yes.
22 acting credits, including the movie Sneakers.
Also including the Towering Inferno.
Oh, wow.
Which is something that's referenced on Quantum Leap.
Yes, it is. And his wife is played by Victoria Vanderboot. She has 51 stunt credits and 9 acting credits, this being the last acting credit that she
And one
had.
of her stunt credits is for Titanic.
Ooh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
They go and get Dell's luggage off the road, and then they turn around and the car is on fire because of that, cigarette that Dell dropped. Neil is amused, thinking, haha, you did this to yourself, until he realizes that Dell used his credit card to get the car. And now he's very angry.
And of course he thinks that Dell stole it. We're having that argument again. And Dell's like, I don't know how it ended up in my wallet. I thought you gave it to me.
Right.
You're like, why would I give you my credit card?
And the credit card is now been switched back into his wallet.
Right. So all of the credit cards are in the wallet in the burning car.
Right.
They have no cash and no credit cards. And they're stranded on the highway with nothing but Dell's giant trunk full of shower curtain rings.
So they manage to drive this car somehow.
It's still smoldering. It's a shell of a car. They drive it to a motel. Now this part here this movie's funny and all, but I thought this was just ridiculous. They should not be able to drive this. It's literally smoldering.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
At least put a scene of them, like, packing snow in it or something to cool it down.
Right.
Like, later we'll find out that Del says, oh, he's worried about having barbecue marks on his butt from sitting on the hot car. Yeah, it was on fire 5 minutes ago.
Right. And they run into a hotel clerk played by Martin Guerrero. 49 credits for him, including the blood-sucking lawyer from Jurassic Park, and an assassin in the 5th season finale of The X-Files, an episode that Carla was a background actress in. Carla Mack.
Oh, that was one of her episodes? Awesome.
Yep. And she actually met Martin Guerrero and has a picture with him.
Okay.
I could maybe try to dig that up and include that. Perhaps.
That would be an awesome thing to see if she can share with you.
Yeah, I think she already has. I just have to find it.
Well, if you can't find it, ask her for it again.
Yeah, I'm sure she would be willing to do that.
You have some time before this drops.
Right,
so
yes, absolutely.
You can work on that. The hotel clerk wants a credit card, and Neil tries giving him the burned up chunks of plastic that he retrieved from his burned up wallet in the burned up car.
Yep.
But those are no longer credit cards.
No, they're
the
charged
room is
nothingness.
$42.50. He says he'll pay cash, but it only has $17, which he offers up along with his very nice watch. And he's refusing to share a room with Del. He's like, you're on your own. The clerk gives him the room for $17 and a watch. And then Del tries to negotiate, but he only has $2 and a Casio. And the clerk is like, nah.
So, he ends up in the car while Neil is in the room.
Which has 2 beds this time,
Yes.
by the way.
So that's nice. And basically Del is in the car with it still smoldering and being snowed on. And he's talking to his wife, which should be a clue that she's no longer with us because the way he's talking to her. He's talking about how he's managed to alienate a person whose company he really, really enjoys. Talking about Neil, of course.
Yeah, he's acknowledging that he's been trouble for Neil and he has a big mouth and he feels bad.
Yep. But Neil also ends up feeling bad and lets Del into his room.
Yeah, he gets a conscious and lets him in. Not before trying to call his wife, who he hasn't talked to in since early in the morning.
Right.
But he can't call her because there's a lock on the phone. And I'm not sure how that's supposed to work. But
no.
I guess you need money to unlock it, but he doesn't have any more.
Yeah, probably.
But I've never seen a lock on a phone like that.
Maybe it's just like it locks from calling out long distance or something along those lines.
I don't know, but he couldn't call her.
Right.
She's not heard from him very much.
Right.
It's now Wednesday night, late Wednesday night.
Yes.
He was supposed to be home early Tuesday evening.
Yes.
And the last time he heard from her was very early Wednesday morning.
Right.
When he was a couple hours away. So she's got to be pretty worried at this point.
Right. I'm assuming that she would be.
And periodically we see shots of her too. Like she's just randomly laying in bed watching TV and not being able to sleep because she doesn't know where her husband is. We also learned that all 4 grandparents were coming on Wednesday, so they're all there already at this point.
Right. And so Del and Neil end up having an actual good time together.
Yeah, they eat junk food. They're drinking from the minibar. And how does a hotel room that you pay cash in have a fully stocked minibar? How does that work?
Not to mention, they would get charged for that.
Well, exactly, but they paid cash. So
This
doesn't feel like the type of place that would have that.
No.
Maybe in the 80s, I don't know.
So they laugh about their shared journey together. Neil ends up mentioning that he has someone that he knows he's going to grow old with. And of course we have this look on Del's face, which should be an indication of...
Right, which it will be one of the things he flashes back to later when he puts it all together. But they drink to the wives.
Right.
And they're, like you said, they're having a great time. They're like laughing about the whole experience at this point, which is good.
Yeah.
They've regained their spirits and they managed to have a decent night's sleep, it looks like.
Not only that, but Neil is finally actually kind of being nice to Del.
Right.
Like really nice and not just kind of like, tolerating him. So in the morning, they have trouble getting the car out of a snowbank.
Yeah, Neil's trying to push the car, but it looks like he's trying to push it from the side. I'm not sure what he's doing, but it didn't look like it should have worked.
And they eventually the car ends up going backwards, crashing into the hotel, and then they drive the heck out of there as fast as
they make a
possibly
run
can.
for it, which they should be okay for because they didn't leave a credit card.
Exactly.
So they should be all right.
Yep.
But yeah, it's not a good situation. Remember, this car is just a frame of burned metal at this point.
So they end up speeding
And they're singing, because the radio works, they're singing Blue Moon of Kentucky.
Ooh, which is another Quantum Leap reference.
Is in an episode of Quantum Leap, Memphis Melody. Scott Bakula performs that song.
Yes, he does. And they end up getting pulled over by a cop played by Michael McKean. 250 credits for him, including Short Circuit 2, a Star Trek Voyager episode titled The Thaw, and he was Chuck in Better Call Saul.
He was also in 4 episodes of The X-Files.
Oh, yes, that's right, of course. Yeah, that's another one he was in. Yeah, and by the way, I didn't even have to look those up. I knew that by memory.
Okay.
I'm pretty familiar with this actor. So, anyway, the car is impounded because, of course, it was.
Yeah, so they were pulled over because they were going 78 miles an hour, but the guys admit that they didn't know that because their speedometer doesn't work. None of the meters are working. Nothing works except the radio. They're very honest with this trooper. And he's like, do you think this vehicle's safe for highway travel? And Dell's like, of course it is. And he's like, yeah, no. Right. So the car is towed. They are left in, I don't know where they are. I don't think we're told. But they're still a while away from home.
So they end up sitting in the... So they end up getting... into a big truck.
It's a big rig that Dell somehow arranged a ride with. And Neil's like, I don't care how we get there as long as the heat works because they're frozen. But the heat's not going to work because they're going to end up sitting in the back, which is a freezer. They're in the freezer compartment of this truck.
Right.
And the truck driver is an uncredited listing. He's called Antisocial Trucker, played by Troy Evans.
So, as they sit in the back of the truck, Dell estimates that they'll be home in 3 hours.
Yeah, which I'm confused by because I already figured out their last stop, they were 4.5 hour drive away. Did they only make it an hour and a half in that car?
I mean, probably.
They switched drivers 3 times, and they only made it an hour and a half?
I guess so. So, at the train station, Neil and Dell seemingly say goodbye.
Yeah, so they're finally in Chicago. They're at the LaSalle station. And Neil's going to take the Chicago Loop home, which is a local train. They've made it.
So Neil gets on the train, Dell doesn't. And as he's driving, or riding on the train, he smiles thinking about his son, daughter, and wife. And then laughs remembering his adventures with Dell. But then something clicks in his mind. And he ends up going back to the train station. And finds Dell still sitting there. And he's like, what are you doing here still? And and as it turns out, Dell doesn't actually have a home, and his wife has been dead for 8 years.
Yeah.
And so Neil takes Dell home with him to meet his wife and family.
And for one last time, we see the 2 men carrying Dell's trunk, this time up to Neil's house. And we're introduced to the grandparents. Dell meets the kids. Susan, she's overjoyed to have her husband home, says hello to Dell, gives Neil a big hug. Dell smiles.
And that's the
film.
Now, in this scene, we have Richard Hurd as Walt. He's one of the grandparents.
Yes, he plays Susan's father, Walt.
157 credits for him, including Quantum Leap, Future Boy, which we covered.
Yeah, he played Mo Stein / Captain Galaxy in Future Boy.
And the final episode of that series, Mirror Image, which we have yet to cover, but we will.
Yep.
And he barely has a line and was already well established by this point in his life, by the way. He's a one-line actor in this film, but he had done plenty of stuff at this point. He was also in B, the miniseries, and the one before that as well, or actually B, the Final Battle. And he was in Star Trek Voyager as an admiral. He was actually Tom Paris' father in that series.
Yes, he was in 4 episodes of Voyager. He also was in 2 episodes of Next Generation. And he was in 12 episodes of Sequest 2032.
Now, I'm guessing this is where Susan Isaacs is?
No.
No, okay. Well,
she's not anywhere.
All right,
she's the picture. We already covered.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Let's cover the other grandparents first.
I'm
There's
sorry.
3 more grandparents in the room. So that was Susan's father. Susan's mother, Peg, is played by Diana Douglas. The most notable thing on her credit list was 834 episodes of a 1960 series I've never heard of, called Love is a Many Splendored Thing.
That is a lot of episodes.
834 episodes. Apparently it was a thing. It must be a soap of some kind to have that many episodes.
That's only going to be eclipsed by our podcast when it gets to 1,000 episodes.
Right? Neil's mother, Joy, is played by Carol Bruce, who was in 10 episodes of WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yep.
And Neil's father, Martin, was played by George Petrie. He was in 52 episodes of Dallas, 55 episodes of The Jackie Gleason Show, and 14 episodes of The Honeymooners.
So those are definitely credits that I could not figure out who the heck they were.
Yeah.
The only reason I figured out who Richard Hurd was is because I know who he is.
Yeah, this credit list took some work. There was
Yeah.
some Googling. I'm Googling people's names to figure out which character they are. Then we have Marie, which
Yep.
we mentioned her, but let's talk about her a little bit more. Marie is Dell's wife. She is not in the movie, just that 8x10 photo of her is, but she is played by, I'll put in quotes, Susan Isaacs.
Yeah, 2 episodes of Quantum Leap, Heart of a Champion, which we covered, and The Last Gunfighter, which we also covered. Mm-hmm. And she was also in Scrooge.
She's in Scrooge,
which
yes.
we will cover.
And is she actually in that movie, or is she an 8x10 picture in that too?
I do not know. Also, another person that we did not cover, who is apparently in this movie somewhere, Susan Kellerman, who was actually in Beetlejuice.
Yes, she played a waitress, and I didn't put her in line with the things because I'm not sure which waitress she was because we were in like 3 different restaurants.
Right.
And I didn't see any of them talk, but she
Yeah.
played a waitress. She was in Beetlejuice. She also was in the movie Heart and Souls. I love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Other credits include a receptionist played by Kim Grinnell. She was in an episode of Heart to Heart. Couldn't place where this receptionist came up.
Right.
The brand managers played by Grant Forsberg. I don't know who the brand manager is.
Not sure.
But Grant was in an episode of LA Law. And there's a cafe patron that's credited. The actor is David Rayport, and this is his only credit. And I have some more uncredited listings I'm going to go through quick as I can, all right? We have a restaurant patron, Bob Burks. Roxanne, I couldn't figure out who she is. She was played by Deborah Lamb. Coffee shop customer, Don Morgan Keefe. Baker. Where was there a baker in this movie?
I can't think of anywhere.
Yeah, there was a baker apparently, played by Peter Austin Noto. Man at Motel, Richard Sandoval III. Holiday Travelers. We have Farrell Mayer, Nico Stevens, Ken Tipton, Flynn Wells, Jules Dean, and Katherine Jansen. We have Woman. I can't believe why I couldn't figure out who Woman was. She was played by Susan Hayden. Pedestrian was Angelus Alexandris. Street background was Richard Fike. And child at rental counter was Christopher Miser. And
Gotcha.
that's everybody that we have a listing for.
Well, that actress that played Woman must be really proud of that credit on her Internet Movie Database
Right?
page.
Yeah, and I did not bother getting notes for all of those people because
It's
it
already
was
absurd.
too much.
Yeah.
I didn't have the energy. Now, normally what I would do is I would at least look up the ones that had pictures on IMDb. Because usually if you have a picture, you've got like more credits.
Right.
Like we don't have pictures on our IMDb.
Right.
Right? So usually the ones with pictures are the ones that are more interesting to look up. But I didn't even do that because I ran out of steam before I got that far.
Right.
This took me a long time to prep for this one.
Yeah, I can imagine. I also did not have the time nor energy. to
But
do
I really
that,
enjoyed
but-
the movie.
Yeah, it was a good movie.
It was a fun movie leading us up into Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And I'm glad we talked about it.
Yeah.
Is this your guys' favorite Thanksgiving movie?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Comment and let us know.
Let us know. What do you think of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
Yes. And, we were talking about doing more classic movies. This is a classic movie.
This is a classic movie. And we're going to be back in December with some winter holiday movies.
Yes.
Christmas and winter holidays.
We already have one recorded.
And hopefully we'll get some more out in time.
Yeah.
If you have been paying attention to our channel, you know we've been very busy this fall talking about all the new television that's on TV this season. From season 3, Sullivan's Crossing, season 2. Maybe some other stuff is there.
Right. Yeah.
Check it out.
Possibly. You check. Yeah, at this point, we don't even know what's going to be on our channel.
Lots of things. All the things.
Yeah.
Make sure you're following us. Let us know what you like. And maybe we'll cover that too.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Possibly.
We're open to suggestions.
We definitely are. All right, so we would like to hear from you. Stacie can be reached at.
I can reach on Twitter X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee. you can join the Corn Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Corn Productions, signing off.